Hearing twittering birds, the first thing that comes to mind is watching the birds' breakfast this morning. I don't recall that in the past red-winged blackbirds have come to the feeders. You walk through the fields and there they call to each other, usually out of the rose bushes, small shrubs. But recently I've seen them come to the feeders. And the amazing thing is, as a red-winged blackbird approaches, the others take off in one complete movement, a yellow cloud lifting, or multicolored cloud lifting, dispersing, not for long, because the red-winged blackbird doesn't stay for long. Although this morning there is this fascinating leftover of a birdhouse. I don't know what happened to it. First I thought somebody took it off, maybe to repair it or make it squirrel-proof. But in looking closer, it's amazing. If we don't look close, the brain manufactures theories, speculates what could have happened. But looking closer, it wasn't taken off by a carpenter. Maybe it rotted, see? Speculating again. It's broken off or something. But are you putting some bird seeds on the platform? A few days ago I saw the squirrel up there and didn't seem to find anything, and later I walked by and there was nothing. But this morning the birds were really landing there and pecking at it. And the red-winged blackbird had also found that little platform and was staying and staying and staying. And amazingly enough, the blue jay, which wanted to land there too, did not. Even though usually, when a blue jay arrives, the little birds take off too. But here it was a reverse. Blue jay fluttered toward it and back again, and then went down on the ground to pick whatever was down there. Did not even contest. No fight with the blackbird. Later on the blackbird was gone, and so were the blue jays. The thing was there by itself, empty. But this coming of a big bird and the little birds taking off, the going of a big bird, the little birds coming back, it looks so effortless and natural and efficient. They all get fed as long as we put this food out. And it very likely doesn't occur to the little birds to stand up for their rights in the presence of a big bird. Not to be pushed around. Hierarchy. They find a way of. Although, when I talked to my husband this morning and related to him this incident, he said, well, they often do fight. And it's true. Birds are at each other in their territory, chasing each other. Sometimes the little birds chasing out the big birds of their field of feeding, nesting. But on the whole, nature has animals have an easier way of negotiating with each other. Giving in where the giving in is indicated. Without this leaving residues in the bird mind. There was something I wrote down after a meeting, a little while after a meeting, a couple of days ago. I will read it, even though I surely did not write down verbatim what was said. I feel we often come from places much subtler than what you mention in your talks. Anger, jealousy, envy, fear are all well defined. But there are these subtle movements of tenderness, gentleness, seeing tenderly, gently what's around us, that do not get mentioned in your talks. The question has survived my free day. I've been thinking and looking. This is sort of a very good combination, thinking and looking together. I mean alone, but the two modes operating together, off and on about this question. Because it has happened at other times. Every once in a while somebody asking, why do you always occupy the talks with negative emotions? Why don't you say something positive about human beings? That's not exactly what this person said. They said, we come from subtler things than just anger, fear, jealousy, tenderness and gentleness. That's left out of your talks. Is it left out? And if so, why is it left out? I've been wondering about this. First of all, a talk comes out of what people bring to meetings. And in sort of searching through the memory, it's not often that people bring up coming from gentleness and tenderness. Certainly it is never brought up, if it is, as a problem. We don't suffer from gentleness and tenderness. We don't try to get rid of it. Often may not even try to grasp it because it is a byproduct, isn't it? Is that true? Is it a byproduct of being open in this amazing ability human beings have, even though so wrapped up most of the time in the cocoon of our self-concern, self-absorption, also the ability to be free of that, as though stepping out of the cocoon and experiencing each other and the world tenderly, gently. Lovingly, compassionately, which usually is not possible inside of that cocoon. Inside the cocoon, it is contrived niceness or compassionateness, which is not what was being talked about by the questioner. I wouldn't even know how to talk about tenderness and gentleness, because it seems, what can I say? You don't talk about it. Is it taking place in the looking? Is it possible to really look at this pervasive fear experienced by human beings, or anger, pain, the suffering of jealousy and envy, is it possible to look at that thoroughly in a sustained way without tenderness and gentleness? Because if there isn't tenderness and gentleness, there is criticism, judgment, condemnation, which makes it impossible to allow fear to flower, to be seen, to be allowed to be experienced all over this body without resistance. Pain to be felt all over this body, the pain of anger or jealousy, allow it to be felt as it spreads in waves, whichever way it spreads, find out for oneself, without resisting it, without blocking it. Forced, violent, stark, stern looking does not make possible to stay with something. And to find out how, not just how fear arises, but how anger or fear, or what it goes for all of it. It is not specific to any one emotion, what we're saying. To see how fear arises, how it is maintained, kept on burning, what the fuel is that keeps it going. And wonder of wonders, how it can dissipate. At least dissipate as a problem of suffering from it, rather than just allowing it to be felt without resistance. That's a real art. The art of mindfulness, of attention, of awareness. To detect the resistances that are there. They can be so subtle, and if they're not detected, they operate and keep this thing going as suffering. Of course, one of the resistances, we talk a lot about it, is the emergence of storyline about what is happening to me, what has always happened to me, my hopeless case, whichever way we put to ourselves what we are, what our life is, has been, and will probably continue to be in the future. And inadvertently slipping out of direct experiencing the pain of fear or anger into storyline about it, which keeps the emotion going, keeps the story going, and keeps the enclosure going in a non-tender, non-gentle way. So, coming back again, why, as the question has been asked before, why are the talks filled with looking at suffering, anger, fear, pain? What brings us here? What brings you and me here to this place of quietness and beauty. Is it this amazing possibility that exists for us in quietness and natural beauty, not only exclusively, but it seems to be a tremendous help to come in touch with ourselves as we are, stark as a tree without leaves, some limbs broken, some rotten, some holes, to come in touch with it and to talk to each other about it. Not just about, not to establish an inventory of how we are, but to be with what moves us blindly, darkly, inadvertently, to engage in anything but tenderness and gentleness. Is there any meaning to listening to another human being? Telling of their pain and fear and anger? It all depends on what this quality of listening is, whether it's really deeply meaningful. And we're asking, is it possible at the moment of hearing somebody talk about that, to leave this cocoon of self-absorption and just be there, even though one may not be feeling anger, fear, or pain at this moment, and yet wondrously able to enter into it without being infected. I could say compassionately, meaning the heart overflowing with fear, not fear, wanting to convey that. But first we have to listen to it. First we have to touch it. If we don't touch the resistances, the ideas about it, then very little changes. So is this what sort of informs the talks? Entering wholesomely into the human condition as it is presented by human beings who represent humanity. We here represent all of humanity, all of us. And entering into that in a gentle, tender way. No admonitions, no what should or shouldn't be. Seeing those responses come up and dispersing. Responses dispersing in the seeing. They hide, they distort. That is clear as one looks. So then, fear isn't fear anymore, and anger isn't anger, jealousy is not jealousy. Because one learns as one goes that these words also hide what is there in the raw unlabeled, and yet so powerful, inundating the organism. Is it easier to look in the presence of someone who looks with one in this way just described, not trying to support the person, accept the person, reject what is being said? Just free. The cocoon is nowhere around. There's just what's there and can be entered into freely. Together. And the fact that we've been talking about this for 15 or 20 years doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter to me at all. One may think, it's still the same old thing, why not something new that she's talking about? Maybe the day this will not be something new to me as it comes up in a meeting, I will shrivel up and give up this work. But for some unfathomable reason, it doesn't operate that way. Why not? Why isn't it something old? Is it because one doesn't come from what was in the past, remembering and going through the files, but outside of the cocoon is listening? Like for the first time. And with this comes energy. Energy, renewal. One may have been tired before, and the tiredness is blown away as energy arises to look at something freshly. So I still haven't resolved this question. Why don't I talk about tenderness and gentleness? And I have no answer for it. Maybe in the course of the next 2 days, people can help me out. Well, I had to do some talking this morning, but it's not really. See, you need not enter into tenderness and gentleness the way you need to enter into anger and fear and pain or suffering. It is a different kind of thing. It has nothing to do with impediment. Is it that when this is operating, we are not self-conscious and registering it, chalking it up for what is happening to us? Of course, one can think later, oh, I felt so joyful. What was it about that? And realize that's what was going on. But maybe when that is operating, we are not in that self-conscious mode. It is something that is working freely, in harmony with the universe. Because there's also been brought up to me, you always mention nature and the universe, although this was all peace and joy. Recently there was an article, a newsletter, somebody writing me about watching a TV, seeing a water buffalo being eaten up alive by a pack of lions. The windstorm toppling trees, breaking them off, breaking branches or laying low the whole tree. It's not gentle and tender the way we can usually conceive of those words. But there's no obligation for us human beings to judge anything in ourselves, each other, or in the way of animals and wind and hail, water and ice. We don't need to judge. Isn't that a marvelous relief? We chafe under it, constantly having to come up with a position about what's happening. Why? There's also a new way of being, to observe what's going on. Positionless. Gently, tenderly. Maybe that's what's operating, I don't know. Can one watch a so-called cruel event gently, tenderly? Right now with the big drama playing itself out about the trial of Timothy McVeigh, so much hatred expressed, lust for vengeance, needing to see justice done, and then I'll be able to lay down my grief, or put this thing aside. But not until justice is done. What is justice? What happened in the life of a young man that he would do such a thing, if indeed he did? We don't know yet. Although the system of trial is not one to bring out truth. It's pitting cleverness against cleverness. Trying to influence the human mind, 12 human minds. Appeal to the emotions. So is it possible to listen to what goes on in the world without judgment? Not losing interest in it, when one can keep up with what's going on. I personally don't quite know why, but find it very interesting. Maybe it's constant teaching about human beings, human mind, and its incredible power of illusion and delusion. As well, let me not forget, it was good the person reminded me all the lovely things that happen. Person whom I'm friends with, she went to Sri Lanka. No, not Sri Lanka. Yeah. Well, there's all kinds of civil wars almost everywhere these days going on, and just went with her friend to be an observer team to see what's really going on. The Buddhists against the Tamils, I think that was the configuration there. political stuff, subjugation, rebellion, cruelty, and so forth. And she said what moved her, touched her most was all these little, totally inconspicuous deeds done mostly by women there, helping people out. No reporter would ever write their story. They wouldn't publish their story and publish it for $1 million. Just doing things in a quiet way to help alleviate suffering, no matter on what side. Because I've often mentioned in talks this amazing phenomenon of doctors without borders. I've never talked to one directly. Why do they go to these God-forsaken places, into such danger, forbidding conditions, and patch up human beings, whether they will live or not, only leaving at the very last moment when it's better to survive than to go under. Also yesterday I did watch the news when I went home with Kyle. There was a series of pictures taken in a hospital in Zaire to show the appalling conditions in that country. The pictures, the portraits of the people lying on their cots. And what amazed me was what seemed a total lack of resistance on their part. The eyes were open and soft, not demanding and not fearing. And the doctor working around there, his actual pay is 75 cents a month, but he hasn't seen it in months. I don't know what they live on. But somebody's probably getting some stuff from their field, or who knows, and feed themselves. So we tear each other apart and we patch each other up. Care for each other. And fight and kill each other. Amazing. We will end here for today.